Welcome, divas and dudes. It's so wonderful to have you here on this beautiful fall day. Yay for cool weather. So nice to have jackets and a little color that we get to wear because it's so rare that we get to enjoy our sweaters. And so today I have a really fun activity. We are in the middle of Oh My Pie season, and I had the great request to kind of go around the calories, the nutrition facts of pie. So we're going to do that a little bit today. And of course, I'm going to share with you this beautiful pie. So this just came out of the oven. This is my very first butternut pie. Look how beautiful. Just love getting to do that. We had a customer ask for a butternut pie, and he said, I'd like to order a squash pie in a very strong southern accent. And I said, oh, you mean pumpkin? No, I do not mean pumpkin. And so I got to do a little research and learn about butternut in exchange for the pumpkin. So it is a little more work. I mean, because of course when you buy the pumpkin pie mix already mixed, that's kind of cheating, right? Because you didn't even buy the pumpkin and cook it down. But here at Powers Bakery, we've done pumpkin pies for many years, and we would buy the organic canned pumpkin. But this has been so much fun to get to do this whole new style of a different squash. And so what I thought I might do is show you the nutrition facts comparison, because who would have thought that butternut is actually, in some cases, more nutritious than the pumpkin. Now, also because we get to start with this beautiful squash, we also get to control some of the ingredients. So what I'm going to show you today is a way to make this one sugar-free. Woohoo! Sugar-free pie that I'm going to tell you. We're all going to get to sample it, so don't worry. You get to try it. But it tastes fantastic. And you're still getting all kinds of antioxidants and polyphenols that come from this bright yellow, beautiful squash. If you've known me for, more than 10 minutes, you know that I always encourage you to eat more squash. I cook the butternut soup for all of my patients that I meet through ThriveWell and the Start Center and the Mays Cancer Center. I love to make sure that butternut is a normal part of our diet, not just at the holiday season, but albeit it's going to be really special to do for the holiday. And so I scoured lots of recipes. I followed a couple of different southern bakers on YouTube, and I came up with kind of my own recipe. So I'm going to share that with you. And those of you that aren't here in class, it's going to be on the e-blast, so make sure you check that because I'm going to post it. But what I thought I would do is kind of show you. I mean, of course we know that the bright colored veggies are nutrient rich. And so as we go down this lineup, take a look at this. So Ca plus is short for calcium, 92 milligrams of calcium in a pumpkin pie. And it's almost the same in a butternut, but calcium. I mean, what other pie do you get a source of calcium? Kind of cool. And if we even go a little farther, I just pulled out the nutrition facts, and in a 1/8 of a pie, so not a huge piece, that is giving you 7% of your needed calcium for the day. So we'll even say 7 to 10% of your RDI, so recommended daily intake of calcium, comes from a piece of pie. I love that. Vitamin D, not so much. Now that's because in a typical pumpkin pie recipe, it's using condensed milk. But when I use some whole milk, which I didn't in this one, but you could use whole milk, you're going to get a little bit of vitamin D because of the, the added amount, the fortified. In today's recipe, though, I am using this beautiful coconut milk. And, they vary. Sometimes they do have added D, but this one does not. And so that's why it's not a significant source of vitamin D. A little bit you're getting, again, from the butternut. Iron, 7.5 milligrams of iron. That's pretty cool. And when I look at the RDIs for iron, that, again, is somewhere between 7 and 10% of the amount you need for the whole day. And just as a reminder, the RDI is based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So even when we back up a little bit and look at the calories in, 1/8 of the pie, about 300 calories is what you're getting. And if we were to say, what percentage of my day's calories is that, we're looking at about 20%. 16 to 20%. And probably a little higher if we're not following a 2,000 calorie diet, but that gives us an idea. So it's not going to break the calorie bank to have a little piece of pie, especially if we really work on our ingredients. So let's keep going. If we go down a little bit farther and we're looking at potassium, potassium is a great source in both. What food gets kind of the crown of a potassium source? A banana. Bananas are not nearly as potassium rich as the bright orange vegetables. So next time people say, you need to get my potassium, you say, you actually need to just get some butternut soup. Or maybe even a piece of butternut pie. How cool is that? So love the fact that potassium is a great source. And again, to put it in context, if we were considering that part of our recommended daily intake for the day, that is 7%. 7%. Okay, let's go. Vitamin A. Vitamin A, still higher in the butternut. And look at this, 77% of our vitamin A. That's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. 7%. So, when people take supplements because they're trying to get their insurance, this is a great example of why I don't believe we really need to take a vitamin supplement in a lot of ways. Vitamin A is one of those nutrients that is fat soluble, which means that it's stored in the liver, and we really don't want to get too much of it. So if you made bright yellow vegetables part of your regular week's routine of intake, rest assured you're going to get that number up there. This is still a very small serving of butternut in a little piece of pie, and you're getting 77% of your vitamin A. What about vitamin C? If between 1.5 to 2 milligrams, and here it is at 2%. So that's pretty low. We could easily put that up though. If we had, before our pie, what could we have with our dinner meal that would increase our vitamin C? Because remember, this is dessert.
An orange, but that's a lot of sugar though.
Which one?
An orange.
But yeah, you could absolutely. So here,
A lot of sugar though, like
in perspective, it's going to have some sugar, but certainly not. Remember, we always go from good to great. So the amount of the amount of vitamin C in an orange is great. The amount of sugar is moderate. If we went to a glass of orange juice, like a 12-ounce serving, now the sugar goes way high, and not nearly as important to get that vitamin C if the sugar is so high. So that's a really good point. But let's keep building. What if we wanted to increase our vitamin C in the meal before we had our pie? We could maybe make a spinach salad. We could put some orange slices in the salad. We could also have a roasted potato, because potato is high in vitamin C, remember? We could absolutely put any kind of other citrus in our salad. We could use some lemon juice as the salad dressing. So you see, all these little drops of vitamin C are going to really help augment that number in that one salad that we're going to eat before the dessert. And cranberries, oh my goodness, great source of vitamin C in cranberries, which is very apropos for this season, this meal. Okay? So it just kind of gives you a good idea that when you pick the right ingredients in your pie, you can absolutely have a great source of nutrients and moderate amounts of calories. So notice down here that the fat grams will vary a ton also. We could use full fat ingredients, or we could use low fat ingredients and reduce this. We could use butter, or in this case, coconut milk. Now, butter and coconut has about the same amount of fat grams and calories. It's about equal, but the ratio of the saturated to the polyunsaturates vary a lot. So I'm not going to say that one's better than the other. because they both have good qualities. When you look at the saturated in coconut, it's about 9 of the 11 in a quarter cup. So 9 grams of the saturated fat of the 11. So it's about the same as butter. Butter might be a tiny bit higher, but dairy has some other good qualities. I think where our real win is in the sugars. So the naturally occurring sugars are the carbohydrates, which we know are really important. So if somebody calls me up and says, Suzanne, I'd like to get a keto butternut pie, do you think we could do it? No, we can't do it, because nature made the butternut full of carbohydrates, which is what we love. And that is why we can get potassium and iron and calcium and all these micronutrients, because of this beautiful carbohydrate-rich vegetable. But what we could do is make a sugar-free option. And it's probably not a bad idea to have a sugar-free option for a pie on the Thanksgiving table, because let's face it, there's so many things that do have sugar. It's nice if we can do one option that's not going to have sugar. And so it's a great way to be able to improve on things. Okay, so let me show you some of the ways that we are improving on this recipe. I'm going to switch this around. So I'm going to build my recipe. And again, I kind of took some ideas from ones online, and so that's why I wanted to kind of create it as we go. And I've got all my ingredients, so once we write it down, then I'm going to do it with you. So just like we did last week, I made a pie crust. And so and truth be told, the last week's I used a little too large of a pie pan, so it didn't roll out as nicely. This one worked out great, and so I'll show you how we did that. So 1 unbaked pie shell. And again, you don't have to do gluten-free if you don't want to. So pie shell. And this again is for a 9-inch pie shell. Now, the butternut pulp. If you put in your notes that if you buy a butternut that's about 2 pounds, you'll get enough, because we want 2 cups of the pulp. So I'm going to scrape this out, and you'll see this is about the size. Probably have a little extra left over, but that's never a bad thing. Have you ever eaten butternut pulp? It is delicious. I have it for breakfast. I love it. So butternut pulp, and we're going to process it so it's nice and smooth. That'll really help it. And then eggs, and we have to whisk those up. And that's going to be probably 3. You can do 3 large eggs. I wouldn't recommend using the carton eggs. I'd recommend you get the whole eggs in the shell. Here is where there's a nice big difference. You can use coconut sugar. You could use brown sugar if you wanted to, or you can use this product that I have here. It's called Swerve. It's a sugar replacement that's brown, and it's pretty darn good. If I read on the back, what exactly is it made out of? It's a blend of erythritol, prebiotic oligosaccharides, a little bit of vegetable glycerin, fruit juice concentrate for color, and natural flavors. So erythritol is a sugar alcohol. Anytime it ends in OL, it's a sugar alcohol. This sometimes in large amounts can give people gas. So you kind of want to let your friends and family know that it's non-nutritive and it's made with erythritol, because people will know if they've had a bad experience. Now the good news is I'm not putting a lot in there, so even if you have a little bit, chances are it's not going to bother you too badly. Hope. But again, let your family know. So this is a 1/2 cup. And it's a 1-to-1. So say you tried it with coconut sugar first, and then the next time you tried the ideal, and again, it's the brown sugar one. Okay, and then we got the spices. So we got a little salt, a little fresh ground nutmeg. I'm going to show you how to fresh grind it. And then you can use sweet spice from Powerhouse Bakery if you have it. If not, you can use cloves and cinnamon. Okay, and again, if you use the sweet spice, use about 1.5 teaspoons or some combination of that. Salt is 1/2 cup. I'm sorry, 1/2 teaspoon. Hello, that'd be scary. 1/2 cup there. Okay, and so here's another really important ingredient, coconut cream. So this is where if you wanted to use evaporated milk to get more vitamin D, you could. Evaporated milk is important, not just fluid milk. Can you bring me 3 eggs, Miss Lindsay? Thank you so much. So coconut cream, 2/3 of a cup. So lots of variations in this ingredient. So let me go over that with you just a minute. Because what's important, I'm going to open this because I want you to see the ingredients. Very thick and luscious on the inside. Oh, and I left my can opener. She's going to have to bring me that too. When I open this, it has about this much liquid and also the can opener. Thank you so much. I think I left it on the table. Thank you, ma'am. It has about this much liquid and about this much of the nice, thick, beautiful coconut cream. And I really encourage you to, when you open it, thank you. This is from Ben. Thank you, Ben Harrison. He is a dude, and he blessed me with this beautiful can opener. And it uncrimps it, which I just think is so cool. Talk about a kitchen gadget. So when you open it, leave it on the counter, not the refrigerator, because the refrigerator just makes it so much more solid. It's much more difficult to actually get going. So I think this is the best approach. So I'm going to show it to you. I know you can't see it as well, but you see how it's solid? That is the good stuff. So lots of variations. This one is the Sprouts brand. Not all coconut milks will have this beautiful solid top. So I always encourage you to experiment with the brand, see which one you like the best, because once you find one that is like this consistency, you're going to love it because you have so much versatility. So I'm going to just pull this out so you can kind of see. See, it's this beautiful thick cream. And I can use some of that other milk. Like I will save this and put it into maybe my sofrito or somewhere else where I need a little bit more milk. And just to make out my 2/3 cup, I can use some of that. But you see how it's much more thin. So when I'm doing a recipe that requires it to be thick, the last thing you want is for your pie to run when you cut it. So I always hold that part separate and use it if I need to, but I've got the nice, thick, beautiful cream first. Okay? So that's pretty much it. Now, if we were to make a pumpkin pie, what similarities do you see? Of course, instead of the butternut, you'd have something like a can of pumpkin, which is usually a little more than 2 cups. It's usually a traditional can, which is, kind of like this, a 13 or 14 ounce can. But it almost always has eggs. Now, here at Powerhouse Bakery, we actually make a vegan pumpkin pie that is out of this world. So it's not obligatory to have eggs. We can thicken with other things. So kind of a traditional thickener that you might know of is arrowroot. A little more non-traditional but fantastic are flax seeds. So ground up flax seeds would be a great egg replacement. So when I adjust this recipe, I say to make it vegan, replace the eggs with 2 tablespoons of mighty seeds and 2 tablespoons of arrowroot. So you have this beautiful little powder you mix up in a little bowl like this. And instead of your eggs, you can put in the flaxseed and then have a wonderful egg-free dish. So now you can have a butternut pie, high in nutrients and also allergen friendly. So egg-free, dairy-free, because plenty of people have a dairy allergy. But of course, we know eggs are not dairy. It cracks me up when some people say, oh, I have a dairy allergy. And I say, okay. And that includes eggs. It's like, well, just because they come from the same area of the grocery store doesn't mean they come from the same place on the farm. Isn't that funny? No, eggs are not dairy. Eggs are chickens. Well, wannabes anyway. But it's really good when you find a quality coconut milk that you like. There's another brand that I use too called Nature's Charm. It's a little harder to find, but it's almost 90% of that luscious creamy stuff. And we whip this up and put it on our pie to serve it, and oh my goodness, heavenly. Great, great product. Okay, so again, I'll write down this little variation. just so you have it, because again, it's kind of fun to experiment, and it is on the recipe that I'm going to include for you guys. To make vegan, you're going to replace the egg with 2 tablespoons. Now, what's the mighty seeds? Anybody remember?
Flax,
Chia, hemp hearts, and flax. Yes. And 2 tablespoons of arrowroot. So definitely keep arrowroot handy, because even if you're making other things like your gravy at Thanksgiving and you want to thicken it up and you're almost ready to bring it to the table and it's boiling and you just can't quite get it thick enough, you can sprinkle some arrowroot. You know, cornstarch is a lot tougher, right? You have to dissolve it in cold water and baby it until you get it in and mix thoroughly. Flour, even worse, because you have to mix it into a roux with butter, cook it a little bit in the skillet, and then add it to your gravy. Those are all steps that are a little tougher. So having arrowroot handy is such a great trick, because you're right there ready to serve it and it's not thick enough. It's still on the stove. Sprinkle in some arrowroot and keep stirring, and it's voila, it's thickening. So it's really a nice little trick. Okay, so that's our recipe. Now what I want to do is get cooking. There's one other added little secret ingredient, and that is I love to put some little extra flavors into my crust. So again, I never want to do anything, you know, typical at Powerhouse Bakery. We always have to find a new way to add interest and intrigue. So these are some gluten-free ginger snaps that I made. So we are going to crumble those up and put it into the crust. Now, say you don't have the gluten-free ginger snaps. Of course, you could buy regular ginger snaps, but here at Powerhouse Bakery, we do everything gluten-free. So I just made those. So if you email me, I will give you that recipe too. But I also can give you this recipe. So this is just a little extra crumble that we can put in the base. So 2 different options. Let's see, and I'm going to put, I want to put this in the side because I want to show you how I made this. So easy. Say you don't have ginger snaps, but you do have some other ingredients. You have some ginger pulp, and of course, I always recommend you keep this handy because it's so good to add to lots of things for flavor. Salad dressing, you can add it to your quinoa, you can do so much with just ginger pulp. And a little bit of oats, and a little bit of our sweetener and sweet spice. So yeah, you could use coconut sugar or brown sugar, but for this one, we just kind of have these handy, and we want to add a little layer of extra flavor. So I've got my oats, and I'm just going to make a little crumble just like this one to put in my base. Not required. I'm going to write it in as a little extra, but it's kind of fun to do. So I'm going to do a 1/4 cup, which is the same thing as about 3 tablespoons, a little bit more. So 3 tablespoons of oats, 1 teaspoon of sweet spice. So this is a 1/2 teaspoon, so I'm going to put in 2. A tablespoon of ginger pulp. Write this down so I'm honest, I don't forget what I just said. I love this stuff, and I'm going to show you what's in it in just a minute. So, well-rounded tablespoon of ginger pulp. And it doesn't need much more. I'm going to add a little bit of sweetness. So, I think I did 2 tablespoons of the brown sugar replacement. And if I wanted to, I could do a little bit of lemon zest. Now, it doesn't have to, because again, the ginger gives it such a nice little kick. You could do lemon juice, but not too much, because you don't want to add a lot of moisture, but a little bit of lemon and a little bit of juice. So I'm going to hold back, make sure I don't get any seeds. Just a teaspoon or so, because again, we don't want it to be too wet. I don't want it to change the texture of my beautiful crust. Okay, so let's stir that around. And again, this is just an added little flavor of ginger to put in my crust. And this is a great little secret to also do for your apple pie. berry or cherry pie, just a little layer of ginger and sweet spices and a little touch of sugar and oats. Just gives it an extra little crumble of yum. Okay, so again, you could use the cookies if you have them, but I'm just going to sprinkle this in. I'm going to kind of flatten it around. I was thinking another great add-on would be some sugared cranberries. Again, it would definitely give it, a little tartness. So you'll know your family. If they don't like a lot of tart, maybe leave it off. But I love tart. My favorite pie is actually lemon meringue because it's got such a wonderful tart profile. But this one is just going to be a little bit of sweet and a little bit of that little crunchy goodness. Okay, so there is the base. All right, so now I'm going to whip up my butternut. So I'm going to use a spoon and scoop it out. So you can tell I've cooked this a long time. So basically you want to cook it for, check on it in 30 minutes. You want to be able to touch it so that it's really soft. And I'm going to scoop it out. And even if you get a little bit of the skin, don't worry. It's gonna pulverize very nicely. See, I just got a hole in it.
Can you do it in the microwave like potato?
No, don't do it in the microwave. It's so hard to track if it's cooked evenly. So that's a great question. Microwave is not my favorite because it has hot spots. And honestly, it won't be much faster. Now, as soon as I say that, somebody's going to say, you know what, it works great for me. So it might. But I've just never been comfortable doing my sweet potatoes or anything like that in the microwave. All right, I'm going to get a little bit more. So we want 2 cups. And I've been so excited. So we have 4 people ordering butternut pie. So I've been making it. And I love it because I'm always going to have extra butternut to serve as my side dish. And one other trick, put in your notes, is that you don't want to over whip this. You want it to still have a little bit of texture. Because notice when you bake it, it still has a nice thickness to it. If it gets really runny, then it's not nearly as easy to work with. Also, let me give you another little tip. When you're buying your butternut, look for ones that have the longest neck and the shortest little bulb. So to me, this is like perfect size. It's got a lot more pulp in there. And then when it's still warm, pull the seeds out. And just with a knife or even a spoon, you can just pull out those seeds, drop them off. And this little center area is in fact a little bit softer, but it works out really good. You can make pancakes with butternut, just like you do sweet potato. You can make butternut mashers. So good. I eat this for breakfast. I love butternut. And at first, your palate's going to say, oh, it doesn't taste sweet, because we're so used to sweet. I remember when I first ate butternut as a kid, it was off-putting because I wanted it to be sweet. And now I've gotten so used to it, I don't put anything on it except for a little bit of fresh ground pepper. And if you have a nutmeg handy, that's another great accompaniment to butternut. So I'm going to show you how to grind that from the seed. No, that's a great point. No strings, no strings. Beautiful, smooth, and creamy. I love that you brought that up, because a sweet potato pie, if you eat it, you kind of sometimes find a string, right? If the potato is a little on the old side, you notice it. So this one was, let me find this. This was an organic butternut. And so I do like to get the organics, but you can find the traditional ones too. But this is the only thing that's left. If I were going to serve the butternut, I would actually eat the skin. It's delicious. Add a little olive oil, salt, and pepper when you're cooking it, and it is fantastic, just as is, just slicing it up. You want it nice and smooth. Yeah, that's looking beautiful. So let me just let you see. It's not watery. If you don't cook it enough, you'll get chunks. So make sure that when you're touching it, when you bring it out of the oven, it's really soft. The softer, the better. Do make sure as well that you cook it with a sheet pan underneath it, because you don't want, I oftentimes get leaky butternut onto my stove. But see how pretty that is? It's smooth. It's kind of the consistency of a, I don't know, like maybe mashed potato? What do you think? Baby food! It's been a while since I made my baby food, so I didn't think of that at first, Miss Rachel. But it's just a great consistency. So I'm going to put this in my bowl so you can really see it. And I did already measure one out because I made it previously. And I'm telling you, you always get a little extra, which is so nice. So let me just I want you to see how easy it is to scoop out, and then we'll do our eggs. If you don't already have a good food processor, this Braun, talk about kitchen gadgets. I've just loved this. Very easy to clean, and it's a workhorse. So the way I like to measure, and again, this is style, but I always like to have a rounded dome on my measure. So see how that's not flat. That always gives me a little extra bonus. So if I want to lick the pan, I have something to lick. Okay, so these are good to go. I've got my two. Here's the one that's flat straight across and one that's well rounded. So now what I'm going to do is whip up my eggs. So let me get the rest of this out, and I'm going to have my eggs whisked, and I'm going to put it all together. This is where if you cooked a pumpkin, and I know it's a lot of work, but cooking pumpkin has a fairly high yield as well. Anybody ever cook a pumpkin? No? Yes? Awesome. When you cooked it, did you have, were you making a pie specifically?
I think I eventually did, yes.
Good.
I haven't done it in a long time.
Well, you know, and it's one of those things where it's such a fun activity if you have grandkids or kids around, to just help them see, you know, it starts with a beautiful vegetable that you can grow in the garden. And I think I've told you guys, I had 2 amazing crops of pumpkins at my house. The first year we had 74 pumpkins, and the second year almost that many. And it grew from my compost pile. We didn't even go, hey, let's plant some pumpkin seeds. That did not happen. We had seeds from the, maybe from butternut, but also from spaghetti squash. I don't remember ever having pumpkin seeds in my compost pile. And lo and behold, we had an enormous crop. And so it just, I love the fact that who knows how they came to be, but they did. Now, if I ever actually try to grow pumpkins, I probably won't be able to. Okay, so now I'm going to whip up my eggs. So I always want to break them into a smaller container first so I can make sure there's no shells. You probably see my fun little knuckle bump. My hubby taught me that. So no shells, that's going to go in. Now, sometimes people ask if we can make pies or even donuts and cinnamon rolls, etc., higher in protein. And what do you think would be my answer? How could we make them higher in protein? Not necessarily adding more egg. You know, we think of eggs as being protein. Eggs are more fat than protein. But what I like to tell folks is the way to make them higher in nutrients is to use base ingredients like what we're doing. Because truly, the protein is not everything that is made up to be. I mean, protein's important, but to get a healthy dish, we want all those minerals, and we want the complex carbs, as well as having, you know, really the whole ball of wax. And so the other thing we could do, if we really wanted to increase the protein, we could add nuts. We could add nuts to our pie crust. We could add nuts to the base. We could use an all-nut crust. This one here is classic, but you could absolutely increase your protein by using nuts and seeds. Now I'm going to whisk the egg because I want to make sure I get lots of volume. That keeps it really pretty on top. So I'm just going to make sure they're nice and airy. And then I'm just going to work down the list. So I'm going to add in the non-nutritive sweetener, and then the seasonings, and then the coconut cream. And honestly, the coconut cream is going to stay a little chunky like that, and that's okay. If I warmed it up, it will lose some of that nice density, and that's kind of what I want. That was the whole purpose behind, scooping it out of the top of the can. Okay, so now let's add in our butternut. So I have 2 cups of butternut. I can't wait to show you how to grate the nutmeg. Has anybody used fresh nutmeg before? They're a little funky because the nut itself is very slippery. And so it's hard to get it started because, of course, you're trying to grate a round surface. So I'll show you that in just a second. I was so glad I started that in the privacy of my own home because the nutmeg went flying a couple times. And so I thought that's going to be a good tip to share with the divas and dudes. So let me show you. In my little jar here, I've got a couple of halves, which are really good because they already have a flat surface. And then this is what the nutmeg looks like, when you buy it. So let me show you how fun it is to do the grating. So I'm going to start right on my base, and I'm just going to rub across. Now again, this is the round one, so it's very hard to manage. But I'm just going to stay right in the center. And the recipe calls for, a 1/4 teaspoon. Did I not write that on there? 1/4 teaspoon. But I probably didn't write it specifically because I'm not going to get all those little pieces out and measure it. No, I'm just going to get some nutmeg. I'm using a fairly rough blade, and so you can use a finer one if you want, but this one grabs it really nicely. So I'm just holding it on the end. And if you're lucky enough to have one that's already started, it's just that much easier. And so even if you don't use all of it, just put the whole thing back because they last for a really long time. So this one's a very small little half, and it rubs. So it's a hard little nut. So it's important to have a strong base. Like if I tried to do it on this, it's wobbly and too light. I picked this one because it's nice and strong. Okay, so you can see about how much I grated. That's close enough. That's probably a little more than a 1/4 teaspoon, but oh, it smells so good. So that's going to go in. All the little pieces. Okay, now let's measure out the rest. So we've got our sugar. So how much of our non-nutritive are we going to add in? 1/2 cup. All right, this is a 1/3 of a cup measure. So I'm going to do a 1/3 and a little bit more. Okay, there's a 1/3. So if I did 2/3, that would be too much, right? So it's going to be a 1/3 and a 1/4 cup. And what's next on my list? A little bit of salt. I'm using Himalayan just because I think it's so pretty. How much salt? 1/2. It's really about the same. That's a great point, though. I love it. This particular Himalayan is not a super coarse grind. It's a really good question. It's nice and light, but if I put them together and shake it, the Himalayan does fall to the bottom, which tells us that it's a little more dense than regular salt. So yeah, you could probably go a little lighter and not hurt a thing. So I'm going to mix it a little bit before I add in my coconut whipping cream. So I've got my salt and my nutmeg. I still need my sweet spice. Okay, that's smelling so good. All right, so sweet spice is a combination of, lots of spices. So again, you don't have to have powerhouse sweet spice, but I would love it if you did. And you can ad lib. You can put a little more, a little less. This is about 1.5 teaspoons. And again, I'm doing a rounded measure because I just don't want under flavor. No under flavor. Okay, I'm going to give this one more stir, and then I'm going to add in the coconut. All right, final add in. And I'm going to add in all that beautiful coconut cream. Am I missing anything on my ingredient list? Be my extra eyes. All right. Now, I cooked it at 375 for 25 minutes, and then it needed an extra 12 because my oven is very slow. So again, don't count on the recipe being exact. All right, I'm going to pour it right into my unbaked shell on top of my little oat crumble, or I could use the cookies. And it's perfect amount. I just love the fact that you get to brag that your dessert has nutrients in it. I mean, how cool. Now we also, I mean, your apple pie has nutrients as well, right? Lots of vitamin C in the apple pie, but it's usually so high in sugar. This one has got no sugar, and I can't wait for you to get to sample because it is just that good.
So you said you sell your sweet spice here?
Yes, we do. And it's good for so many things. But of course, pie. I also use it for my berry pie, and we make an amazing cherry pie. Yeah, all of those are available. Now, the other thing is I'm not going to put a crust or a topping on this pie. I mean, of course you could. I think once we cut this, I want to serve it with a little bit of cream. But this is so pretty. So that is the completed pie. It's going to pop in the oven. I got a little bit on my crust there. So notice that even though I used the solid coconut, if I had used, the liquid, it probably would have been a little too much even for my pie. So I used the 2/3 of a cup of just the solid, and it turned out absolutely gorgeous.
So just to review, that's the crust that you did last week.
Yes.
And then you did the okay.
Yep.
I got it. And then you still have to put the crust before, and then.
You don't have to cook this one. I mean, yes, I always like to bake, but this is the one that I just baked, and I actually used a raw crust. I made another one earlier, and I used a par-baked crust, and the only difference is that the edges get a little bit browner. It's a little bit crispier. So remember, that was kind of my hint, that if you want to make sure your crust has a nice little bite to it, par-bake it. But also adding the ginger cookies is also another way to give it a little texture variation. So a little added bonus. Okay? So we have a little bit more time. So what I wanted to do was show you how I rolled the crust. Now that I've got a better size pan, and I figured out a trick. So if you have difficulty, the good news is that even if your crust does not come out perfect, you can piecemeal it together. I kind of showed you that last time where, it's hidden. Nobody sees it. But the one that I just poured into had a really nice base and didn't have any cracks. We don't want the cracks to show up because it does make it a little harder to cook without burning. So I'm going to clear off my space here, and I'm just going to show you how I roll it. So here I've got my ball, and also remember last time I didn't have a chance to really chill it very long because I just made it right in front of you. On this one, I have let it chill. I'm going to turn it sideways here, and I'm putting some plastic wrap around my board. So plastic wrap around the board. This is my big marble board. My team is actually using my favorite roller that didn't have the ends. Remember that? It was just one big piece of wood, which is great. But this one works really well too. Okay, and now look at how the crust is still fairly crumbly. And again, if you can do gluten-free, you can do anything because the ones that are made with wheat are so much easier. And I actually have a little piece of dough I wanted to pass around, so you can feel how soft it is. It's very workable. So just pass it around, and don't worry, we're not going to eat that one. Not going to, but it's so soft and luscious. So here is my dough, and I'm going to pull it together, flatten it a little bit, and now I'm going to put parchment over the top, and and I'm going to roll it from this spot. So it's much more forgiving because parchment, doesn't really stick. So now, I'm going to put this over here. I'm going to do forward and then side. So I'm doing a perpendicular turn, and then when I take off the parchment, I've got a little bit of cracks. I'm just going to put those together. But see, it comes off the plastic so easily. Do a couple more rolls. Come Christmas time or the end of our pie season, I want you guys to take some of the dough and try making some little leaves. Then you can work the dough all you want because, we're not going to really eat a lot of the little artwork out of the dough, but it sure makes it pretty. Okay, that's coming out beautifully. And now I've got my pie pan that I'm going to measure. So I'm going to turn it, see if I'm getting the right diameter. It looks like I can go a little bit wider. I've got a couple of cracks, so I'm just going to pull it in. Move my dough around. It moves very easily on the plastic. And then I've got a fancy little trick I'm going to show you to get it into the pan. Almost ready. So it's a little bit thick on one side, so I'm always just checking to make sure I got the right thickness. Between last week and this week, has anybody tried making a pie? No? Now. You're going to eat my pie, and you're not going to make some pie. I get ya. All right, that looks so pretty. Okay, so now I'm going to flip it over. Let's see. So I'm going to pick it up with my pan. Right? You're like, oh, we get you. Little inversion trick. Yes. Hold it together. Now, if I had, if I did it with the parchment, I'd have to get the plastic out, right? So now it's right up next to my cutting board, and flip, and beautiful. See, there's all kinds of tricks when we sleep on it. It's like, what did I do last year? I was thinking, I know I made them look great. So even though the edges are still a little bit inadequate, I can dip my finger in some flour. I think I had my flour over here. And make my cute little edges. And in spots where I'm a little bit short, I'm just going to do a little cut and paste. Works out beautiful. And again, there's no cuts in the center. So work it a little bit to the ends. This is where I could put my beans in and let it par bake. When we do the fruit-filled pies, we do like to cook the apples a little ahead of time. And, gosh, when I was growing up, my mom never pre-cooked. But with a wheat crust, it's just a little more forgiving. And when you know your oven really well, you also know if you need to, hurry it up or slow it down. So, again, don't count on the time, temperature items on a recipe to be 100%. You're going to always have to adjust it based on your own oven. I don't ever want my team to go, well, I temped it. It's like, well, did you look at it though? So now I've got my edges crimped around, and I'm going to use a sharp knife and just slice off the extra so it has a nice clean edge. And I could really play with these. I could get my fingers wet and do a little more jazzy design around the edges. I could use the leftovers and make a little rope. But at least now we have a beautiful pie crust ready to fill. And we have about 19 more that we have to make at Powerhouse Bakery today. So if anybody wants to stay and practice, you can. Okay? So here is the pie shell ready for another filling. And boy, bon appetit. I can't wait to get some out and have you all try it. So thank you for joining me, and let's have some pie.